My damn watch stopped working. I think the battery's dead. I'm bugged not knowing what time it is. Bugged way more than I would have thought. It's bad enough not knowing what day it is. So what have I been doing? The usual, escaping and surviving. This particular escaping started because I had to go to the bathroom, and since, like I said, it's farmland around here for as far as you can see, there was no good place to go. No trees, no bushes, no camouflage areas, just fields and fields of vegetables. The farther I walked down the highway, the more of an emergency it was becoming, so I finally went through a field of, I think, Brussels sprouts over to some portable outhouses. I could see a couple of pickup trucks and a swarm of field workers in the distance, but there were other portable outhouses near them, so I thought I could use one of the nearer ones without being seen. The outhouses said Honey Hut on the outside, which I thought was pretty funny considering the way they smelled on the inside. But it was an emergency, so I went in, closed the door, and did my business. Man, it was ripe in there. I tried to hold my breath, but wound up having to gulp in a few more. And when I was all done, I tried to shoot out the door, but the door wouldn't open. I frantically turned the lock every which way, but it would not release the door. I rattled, I shook, I twisted, I pushed, but I was trapped. Calm down, Holly. Calm down, I told myself. I tried the door some more, tried to be calm, tried to analyze the situation. But the stupid latch wouldn't release, and it was so rancid in there. Calm down, I shouted aloud. I came all this way to suffocate to death in an outhouse? Forget it. No way. Nuh-uh. And so I sat on the seat and bashed the door with my feet. Smash, bash, crash, smash, bash, crash. The whole outhouse was shaking. Smash, bash, crash, smash, bash, crash. I whacked it with all my might, and finally, the door flew open. I dove outside, gasping for air, and I landed right in front of a big, dusty farmer. Inside, instead of buying myself some time by yelling at him about the conditions of his facilities, I did something really stupid. I tried to make a break for it. Whoa, whoa! He grabbed me by the back of my backpack and turned me so I was facing him. Who are you? Someone who about died in there, I shouted, pointing at his honey hut. I can't believe you make people use those. They're rancid death traps. I got locked inside. He raised an eyebrow at me, holding me at an arm's distance. They're waiting on the sump truck, he said, which is behind schedule. He didn't seem mad, just big. Big feet and big dirty boots, big hands, big sweaty trucker hats, big fleshy nose. Just big. Let me go, I shouted. But he didn't. Instead, he walked me over to his big truck and shoved me inside through the driver door, saying, When I first spotted you, I thought you were a field worker making a bad latrine choice, but you're a runaway, aren't you? I dove for the passenger door, but he snagged me by the backpack again and said, How long have you been on the run? That eyebrow went up again. And what you been running about? I clammed up tight. Like it was any of his business, he snorted softly and nodded. Well, it's plain to see you could use a shower and some clean clothes. He shoved me at a sideways glance, and a hot meal most likely. It's funny what the words a hot meal can do to you when you haven't had one in a while. They get your taste buds amped and your saliva flowing. They make you start picturing a table loaded high with meat and potatoes and gravy and vegetables and rolls and butter and pie. And a big pitcher of ice-cold milk. Yes, that's what a hot meal is. None of this fast food stuff. I don't care how hot they serve it. Fast food will never qualify as a hot meal. The bad thing about someone offering you a hot meal is that it can make you drop your defenses, and when you're on the run, it's important to stay suspicious. You don't want to get duped by the lure of meat and potatoes and pie. I like pie. But I did quit squirming after that. He drove through the field over to the swarm of workers and shouted something in Spanish to one man, who nodded and waved like, Don't sweat it, I got it. We drove past the workers slowly, then sped up on the dirt road that cut away from the highway between fields. I looked in all directions and realized that no matter which way I ran, there was no place to hide. I was surrounded by fields and fields of low-growing plants. I'm Walt, by the way, he told me, looking straight ahead. Walt Lewis. I said nothing. You'll like my wife. Good cook. Good humor. Good heart. I still said nothing, but I could see the farmhouse straight ahead. It was yellow and white, with flower beds at the base of the front porch and dormer windows on the second floor. I love dormer windows. They're very storybook. So between the promise of a hot meal and the sight of dormer windows, he didn't have to yank too hard to get me to follow him inside. And after he explained the situation of his wife, he clucked all over me like a mama hen. Poor sweet... She clucked all over me like a mama hen. Poor sweet darling, let's get you into the bath. I didn't actually talk to her, but I did turn over all my clothes. Then I got in the bathtub. Do you know how long it's been since I've soaked in a bath? Forever! I used to hate baths, but I was stupid. Baths are divine. They're a massage therapy for the soul. And I really needed one. I washed my hair 4 times before it didn't feel matted to my head anymore, and I had to switch the bath water 3 times before it stopped being muddy looking. I wish I could just have relaxed. But I started worrying about my name being in my jacket. Had she seen it? What if she was calling social services? Walt's wife came in twice. Once to pass in a change of clothes and say, "I'm Valerie, by the way. I hope these fit you. I only had boys, so the choice isn't great, but I've got boxes and boxes in the attic if these don't work." The second time was about an hour later when she knocked and popped her head in, saying, "Supper's about ready." I still hadn't said anything more to either of them, but when I emerged from the bathroom and came downstairs to the kitchen table, the smell of pot roast and biscuits broke me down. "Oh, that smells so good," I said, and it came out hoarse, sort of choked up. Valerie smiled at you. "Well, look at you," she said, sounding very pleased. "And those clothes fit you fine." They did fit. And they were a good choice. Regular jeans and a black t-shirt with a long-sleeve button-down work shirt to wear over. "Have a seat, then," she said, "and let's say grace." But on my way over to the table, a border collie with bright blue eyes came padding towards me. She looked so happy and so sweet that before Walt could finish snapping his fingers and say, "Chia, corner," I was down on my knees, letting her love me up with doggy kisses. Valerie laughed, and Walt did too, but they made me wash my hands and face again before eating. Dinner was great, and they were nice, but I didn't say a word. I did shrug and shake my head some when they asked me questions, but when they started trying to find out more about why I was on my own, I quit making any kind of response at all. I just ate. Nobody from social services came pounding on the door, and Valerie set me up in a room. Like, of course I was going to spend the night. The bed was big and soft with feathery pillows, and there were all my clothes clean and folded at the foot of it. I fell asleep right away, but in the middle of the night something spooked me awake. A noise. Footsteps inside my room. I clicked on the light quick and laughed when I saw it was Chia. "Hi, girl," I whispered, then got back in bed and patted the covers. "Want to sleep up here with me?" She jumped onto the bed and lay down against me. I put my arm around her, and for one brief floating moment I felt so happy. Then I started having dangerous thoughts. What if Walt and Valerie could become my foster parents? I could help them around the farm. I could go to school. Or if there weren't schools around, maybe Valerie would homeschool me. I'd be a good student. I'd try hard. I'd be helpful and grateful. And Chia could sleep on my bed every night. I'd have a dog. I'd have a home. I'd have a family. Early the next morning, Chia nudged me awake. I let her out of the room and heard little clinking noises coming from the kitchen. So I went downstairs where I found Walt reading the paper and drinking coffee at the table, where Valerie fried eggs at the stove. I stepped inside the kitchen and asked, "Do you need any help?" Valerie practically dropped her spatula, and it must have startled Walt too, because he jerked and spilled a little coffee. Valerie laughed and said, "Well, good morning. You're up early." There was toast sitting in the toaster, so I went over and said, "Would you like me to butter these?" "Sure," Valerie said, handing me a dish of butter. "That'd be great." But something was wrong, and it wasn't just that I was suddenly talking to them. Valerie was nervous, and I was pretty sure I knew why. I didn't say, "You called social services, didn't you?" I just ate breakfast and then excused myself to use the bathroom. But what I really did was hide around the corner, and when they thought I was gone, Valerie whispered, "I feel like I'm betraying her. She seems like such a sweet, scared child." I heard the paper rustle and Walt's voice say, "She'll run, Valerie. She'll run and wind up in the condition I found her in all over again." "Maybe she can stay here with us." "Val," she warned, "we're too old for that. And we can't give her what she needs." "What the girl needs is love." I heard the paper snap and Walt's chair grind back. "What she needs is a family and friends and a place to go to school. She'll be in good hands, Val." The woman sounded very nice. We're doing the right thing. "They're coming at 11? Around 11, that's what she said. I was already backing away from the kitchen when I heard him say, "Tillers can't get me that tractor part until next week, but I located one in Santa Barbara. I'll be taking a quick trip up there this morning after I make the rounds." "But what about the girl?" Valerie whispered. "What if she tries to run?" "She'll be fine. Just keep her busy. I'll be back before 11. And if she does try to run, call Hector on his cell. He'll spot her and bring her in." I hurried away, then made a noisy walk back to the kitchen. "Do you mind," I asked them, "if I go back to bed? I'm still really tired." "No, of course not," Valerie said. So I went upstairs, stuffed the bed with pillows, shoved my things into my backpack, and climbed out the dormer window. It wasn't hard getting down because the top floor wasn't as wide as the bottom floor, and there were posts and window ledges to hold on to. I could think of only one way off the farm without being seen: Walt's truck. I managed to get to it before he did, and there was no place to hide in the bed. It was a four-door, though, so I sneaked inside the cab through a back door and hid on the floor, camouflaging myself with a tattered tarp that was lying there. I was still rustling around when the driver's door flew open. I held my breath and waited, but nobody yanked me out of the truck. Instead, it fired up and rolled away. Walt stopped and talked to several people before he finally hit the highway, and then he turned on the radio, and we just flew down the road for about an hour before he parked the truck and got out. I gave it a few minutes, then looked out the window. We were at some tractor facility, but there were trees and shrubs right across the parking lot, so the first chance I got, I snuck out of the truck, hurried over to the bushes, then watched and waited. It took only about 10 minutes for Walt to saunter back to the truck. He had a box in his hands and looked like he was whistling. "Have a nice life," I whispered as he drove off. I meant it to be sarcastic, but there was a big lump in my throat when I said it. On the outside, I was kissing them off, but on the inside I was thinking that maybe I should have told them why I didn't want to go back into the system. Maybe I should have asked them to let me stay with them. Maybe Valerie would have been able to talk him into it. I felt like a stray dog that had wandered onto the property. A stray that half the family wanted to keep and the other half wanted to take to the pound. Why didn't I wag? Why didn't I beg? Why didn't I try? But I didn't, and it's too late now.